Welcome to my latest video, exploring railway lines in Shropshire and the surrounding area. We can see marked on the map the main line from Shrewsbury through Telford down to Wolverhampton. We're going to be following the old line here from Hadley Junction that went down through Telford Town Park, through Oaken Gates, Sturchley, and down towards the River Severn at Coalport, just a little bit further downstream from Ironbridge. Of our starting point before we go on the walk is a quick look at Ironbridge. Well, welcome to the Severn Gorge, and here I am down in Ironbridge. Well, I'm going to go a little bit further downstream now and find Coalport Station, or Coalport East Station as it was known. I'm going to walk from Coalport East Station all the way to Wellington in the north part of Telford. Well, I've come down about a mile from Ironbridge downstream to Coalport, and you can see there on the River Severn the Coalport Bridge. And if I swing round and face the north, this, I'm afraid, is what is left of the station. All the station buildings were demolished. The one in the background in the middle there has been restored, but there's really nothing left of the station. Even the bridges are not the original bridges. This, of course, was the southern end of the line. We're going to start walking up the line now towards Madeley. We're now walking, of course, on the Silkin Way, and you can see this marker, which is one of the old railway wheels, of course, and it's just 5 miles to the town centre. So let's get going in that direction. We've just come up a short way from Coalport, and looking east you can still see one of the original bridges there, and the Silkin Way now has been put into a nice gravel path, and we've got 5 miles of this all the way to the town centre. Well, the building of this line wasn't short of problems. One of the problems was the sharp inclines. If you're going to build a railway out of a river gorge, there's going to be steep climbs. In its building, a lot of the hardcore they put down was sliding into the houses and became a threat to the houses. And a lot of objections were raised to the actual building of it at all. And there was in doubt at one stage whether it was ever going to be finished. But eventually it was finished, but the subsidence didn't finish. It constantly dogged the railway company for years afterwards. The other problem, of course, is the steep incline was it was hard for the trains. Fortunately, the trains down to Coalport East Station were just small trains, just 2 carriages. Had they had any more carriages, they would have needed extra trains to pull up the line. Well, I'm continuing my walk up this incline. It's actually hard to believe that trains could even pull up this, because it's really quite steep. Just walking up is quite tiring. And it's hard to imagine those trains pulling 2 carriages up from Coalport Station. Well, I've come about half a mile from Coalport, and I'm looking east, and in the distance there you can see a rather interesting bridge, because it's quite steep, and that's the Hay Incline Plain. Now, that bridge has an important role in the Blisshill Open Air Museum, which is up on top of the North Bank up here. This is where all the old iron furnaces used to be. And also up there is a canal, and the iron was transported from the canal to the top of the bank. It would then be transported down the Hay Incline Plain, across this railway, and down onto the river, where it was put onto some boats. So why did iron become so important around here? Well, that was largely down to a man called Adrian Darby, and he developed the whole process of making iron. And the big advancement was the use of coke instead of charcoal, which was a lot easier to get hold of and a lot more practical, and this really expanded the use of iron, and so this became a big iron producing area. Now, Hay Incline Plain, of course, is a proper railway, and it was a way of transporting the iron from the canal down to the river to the boats to be transported. So how did they do it? Well, it's a 2-way railway, and it works on gravity. So your heavy load goes on the one side and pulls up the empty cars on the other side. And actually what they pulled up was boats, little tugboats. They were put in wheeled cradles which went on the track. Now, a steam engine was used to help where appropriate, but generally speaking it was the power of gravity that lifted the carts. However, there were times when the carts needed pulling up and down a little bit, particularly when they were right low in the water, and so steam engines were used from time to time.
The technique, of course, was very, very successful. They had to make sure the loads were secure because it's quite a slope, it's quite a steep incline, but the hay incline plane worked really well and served the iron area here for a long, long time. Well, we've come up about half a mile from the hay incline plane, and you can now see the one tunnel that's on this railway line. The tunnel, as you can see, is very, very well preserved. Now, a couple of features I will mention about this tunnel. One, they've added some modern lights in there, which rather loses the effect, but I suppose it makes it a little bit safer on this footpath. You also might notice that it doesn't look that high, and that is because when they built this footpath, they've raised the ground, and so it was actually higher than that, when otherwise the train would have struggled to get under. If we just quickly look up to the left hand side, we can see part of the Blisshill Museum. And if you're ever in this area, I do hope you come and have a look at it, and maybe come and have a look at this line as well, and the other railway lines such as the Severn Valley Railway, which are in this area. And I'm now going to walk up north up the line towards Madeley Market Station. Well, we've arrived at Madeley Market Station now, and it's great to see that the building is in pretty good condition, much as it was all those years ago when it was actually running. The stations on this line were actually all very similar to this one. That's partly because they were designed and built by a local man called Christopher Bagley. Now, Christopher Bagley was a builder and obviously got the contract to build all the stations. It's a shame we couldn't find this at Coalport. Anyway, it's really good to see that Madeley has still got its original station. This side is the up platform, and we had a loop here, a double line, and on the down platform, which was been here, no longer here, would have been a waiting room. Both the down line and the platform were removed well before the line closed, to leave just this side, the up side, being the station building. That was a fairly common pattern on this line, with the second loop being removed and the waiting room being removed on the downward line. We'll find the same pattern happened up at the next station, which is Sturchley and Dorley. Well, just to the north of the market station, there are two bridges which cross the roads as we pass the town of Madeley itself. Sadly, these aren't the original bridges. These bridges have been added in the last 20-30 years to make the Silking Way a pathway right through the town. Well, we've reached the point where the line now crosses the Ironbridge power station line. Now this line runs from sort of Telford town centre, branching off the Shrewsbury to Wolverhampton line, and it goes down a nice slow incline all the way to Ironbridge power station. In the distance you can see a bridge which has been demolished. That's the actual bridge that this line went over. We're on a sort of passing loop here, but that's where the original course of the Coalport line went. I'm now looking north up the power station line. Now the power station is due to close next year, which opens up the question of what's going to happen to this piece of line. What an opportunity for the area to have a steam heritage line that goes all the way into Ironbridge. As mentioned before, a local councillor, Eric Carter, is pushing very hard for this to happen, along with preservation elsewhere in the Telford and Shropshire area. Well, we've come north now of Madeley, and to an interesting bridge here. Rather ironically, we're in Aqueduct, where we've got a fairly interesting viaduct. And it's interesting because this is clearly a later addition. You can tell by the brickwork, unfortunately defaced a little bit, but not the original stone bridge that would have been here back in Victorian times. But it's from this point at Aqueduct that we now enter the town park. The next stage of the journey, right up to Hadley, is in part 2 of this video.